What if I told you there was a book that could revolutionize how you play D&D?
I didn't plan for this. Oh no.
Guys, we have an hour. We need to get back to work. Keep the roleplay to a minimum. And we're like, equine bones, you say yes from the horse war.
Oh, tales from the horse war, you say. Tell us more.
I have a specific math question.
Because I apologize for bringing up math, folks.
Yeah. Look, I apologize to everyone else, but there are some Lorecast diehards that would have found that super interesting.
There is on our Discord, there is a big conversation going on about this right now.
I think it also depends on your playtesting, right?
Sure.
What do your players like? What resonates with them? Do they feel like it's powerful? Do they feel like it's underpowered? And
Let's go! All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the Gen Con Special! My name is Ben Byrne. I'm joined, as always, by Shawn Merwin, and this week, very special guests, Makenzie to Armas and Justice Ramin Arman. Justice, welcome to the Lorecast. I have to ask you, what is your favorite thing about attending Gen Con or conventions like it?
oh my gosh. My favorite thing is walking the dealer hall and getting to chat with people who make the products they're making. So chatting with like a board game designer, or I met the Beetle and Grimm's folks at Gen Con 2018. So I love when people come out and they share the things that they worked on and their passion. It oozes.
How many Gen Cons have you been to?
I've been to every one since Gen Con 50 except one. So I don't know what Gen Con we're on right now, but whatever, that one minus one. Oh, and there was the pandemic stuff. So
Sure.
a number of them.
Did you have a similar experience that I had with PAX Oz, which was I went to PAX Oz in 2019 before pandemic. Kind of didn't really know anybody. I was there running D&D games for Adventurers League, but between the games that I was running, kind of just didn't have much to do. Went and had lunch by myself and carried my kid around, and it was a very kind of weird, lonely experience at that point. But then when I came back in 2021, when PAX came back, I'd met a bunch of people in the industry. I'd met Dante at that point because we'd worked together through lockdowns. And so walking the dealer show floor was just like I was Tobey Maguire suddenly at Spider-Man, where I was like, I know this dude and I know that person. And was that a similar experience for you over the years?
It was a little like that. I went back and I told Sam, I gushed about all the cool stuff. I was like, here's all the cool stuff we didn't get to do this year. So I came back, I did, went to seminars. I saw a really cool seminar from a toxicologist talking about poisons in tabletop role-playing games based on real toxins. I went to an immersive GMing workshop with Sam where we, I think Sirenscape hosted it. So we made real sense, and we got together to do a soundscape about witches. And there was this dude with like long hair, total slasher vibes, said nothing the entire time. And then they're like, the guy at Sirenscape was like, and now we're going to do witches. So I want you to give your best witch cackle. And, we each gave her, and we had not seen this man say a word. And then he goes, ooh, like that. Gets so into it. It was the best thing ever. And that's also the first time I worked the booth for B&G.
Yeah, there you go.
That was fun.
Makenzie, what about yourself? What do you love about coming to Gen Con?
Honestly, it's always been like just seeing people. Like with a lot of conventions, a lot of it's just like, oh, friends who I don't get to see anywhere else because we're all busy. And we'll have those get-togethers and those events and networking. I almost said workshopping. Networking events. And it'll always be that thing of like, I'll get to see folks and be like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And we'll catch up on life. And then I'll say, I can't wait to see you for the rest, like at some point later during the con. And then we will not see each other ever again because we're always so busy.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like, I've loved doing like panels. I love talking with folks. I love, this year we've been blessed enough to do some signings, and that's been amazing. I love meeting with people and talking with them and seeing what they're excited about and hearing their stories. It's always a good time. Cons for me are always about like the people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's in part because I'm always too busy to play games, which is always a bummer. But I love just seeing folks up and about and playing games and doing their thing.
Yeah, I agree. The social stuff for me is what I love about cons as well. The networking nights and the panels and that sort of thing. And just it kind of encapsulated for me at Gen Con this year. This is going to be a slightly sappy story, but at the Wizards event the other night, just out of the crowd came Zach Naum, he's an Australian D&D YouTuber. He does a live play. Zach Speaks Giant is his Twitter handle. And I wasn't expecting to see him. I didn't know he'd made the trip over, and he just emerges out of the crowd. And I only usually see him at PAX Oz. So it's just like, oh my God, it's a real convention. Zach's here. Shawn, what about yourself? What do you love about Gen Con?
Everything that you've all said is spot on. But what I really love is sitting down with strangers and playing a game.
Sure.
Especially if it's a game that you design, because then you realize that the thing that you do when you're sitting at your cubicle and you're typing away and you're like, this is the 20th draft of this, there are people out there who want that. And it's a huge part of their lives. And when they're playing with other strangers and that light goes on in their eyes that, oh, this is how we play at home, but this other person plays this way. And they do this cool thing, and this DM does this cool thing. I'm going to go steal what that DM did, and I'm going to do that with my home game. And it's a community that then spreads this love of this game that we play and that we make throughout the world.
I wish I could play more games at conventions. It's always one of those things where it's like, we're always doing so much stuff. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to play games this Gen Con. But gosh, I want to, because some of my favorite gaming experiences have been like, after the con, we've all finished work and we're like, hey, I got this on the game, on the dealer hall. You want to play it? And we'll sit at a bar till like 1 a.m. looking at a game going, this is so much fun. We're still probably playing it wrong because it's their first time. It's just out of the box, but oh, this is amazing. And it's those moments are just, mwah.
Well, speaking of Gen Con 2024, yeah, that's what this year is.
It is all year.
Shawn Merwin, you've been playing 5e for a while. You've been playing D&D for a very long time.
They tell me that, yes.
But it's time to evolve your D&D game. What if I told you there was a book that could revolutionize how you play D&D and bring it into 2024? Make every D&D night way more of an experience, a fuller experience, a revived experience. Would you be interested in such a book?
You might be able to interest me in that, Ben.
Okay.
Why? Do you know of such a thing?
Yeah, I've got the Puncheons Flagons official D&D cocktail book.
Yeah, perfect.
Which fell into my hands during the convention at some point. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea when this is coming out, if it's currently available or whether it's I think I saw there was a release date a little later in August, possibly. But you can have a flick through that if you want. Excellent. And see all the amazing cocktails that you can elevate your D&D game with.
What's the transition from ounces to milliliters? I need to know.
Nobody knows.
Well, we figured it out before. I think 1.5 ounces is 30 milliliters because that's how much a single shot is.
That would do it, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. And we figured this out because, okay, real talk for a second, coming over to the States. I have never imbibed so much alcohol so quickly because in Australia, there are laws about you have to measure drinks when you pour them. Oh. So if you ask for like a single shot of whiskey or whatever, they have to measure it in a shot thing.
Are they supposed to here?
Sorry?
Are they supposed to here?
Supposed to.
Oh, no.
Well, if you get a mixed drink.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. You ever watch bartenders go at it? They'll just be like, that's about it. And
that's about right.
People, so I've watched videos of people like who have been bartending for so many years, and they're able to very accurately pour shots. And actually they'll measure it out, and that's super cool. It is also still terrifying to watch someone just liquor bottle and we're good.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask for a double shot here, my experience is you get a glass back that looks like apple juice because they've just like filled it virtually to the top. So, 1.5 ounces is 30 milliliters, which is a shot apparently. Anyway, with that piece of trivia in mind, how would you like to evolve the rules of your D&D game and bring it into 2024?
Oh, not at all. I'm stuck with this book, but thanks, I'm out. What, you're saying we could do both?
We can. With this, I was incredibly lucky to get my hands on a copy of the Player's Handbook for 5e 2024. I know you folks are extremely excited about this. Makenzie, you've been working on this pretty directly.
Yes.
Justice, you've been working more on the adventure side of things.
Yes. Yeah. I worked very briefly on just playtesting internally.
Sure. Are you enjoying the playtest?
I loved the playtest for the Player's Handbook. It was a lot of fun. We playtested internally, so I love to say that anything that the fans are playing and trying out, we tried internally. We had our own. I hear many of us were mauled by sphinxes of wonder
Oh, yeah.
in playtesting some of those monsters. And no, it's really exciting to see it out. And honestly, like I'm looking forward to reading it more myself. So
I was actually the first death.
Oh wow.
I was also the second death. I don't know if you were in that playtest session, but I died immediately. It was I think almost 2 years ago at this point. But I wiped, and we needed to keep going with the playtest. They're like, I don't know, you mysteriously come back with 1 hit point. And I was like, great. And then I wiped again. So I was like, and I died twice. Then I also had I was playtesting a wizard. My wizard got insta-killed, which is the first time I've gotten insta-killed in any game. I died. A lot of my characters died in the making of this book.
Well, their souls, their sacrifices were worth it. I haven't.
If only I could remember their names.
mine was Sneaky Pete. I was a rogue.
Oh, nice.
My favorite part of the playtest was listening to Wes Schneider describing a stable with equine bones. And we did not let him live that down.
Yeah.
So every time we saw bones, we're like, are these equine bones? Are they bovine bones? What sort of bones are we looking at? So anytime I see like a skeleton, I'm like, equine?
Equine bones? No, for the playtest we did with that adventure, we weren't, because it was a mechanical playtest, we were trying very hard to focus on just the numbers and getting through the rules, but we are also people who love D&D, so we can't really let that go. And I think that one devolved into stories about the horse war.
Yes, they're like, guys, we have an hour. We need to get back to work. Keep the role play to a minimum. And we're like, equine bones? You say, yes, from the horse war.
Oh, tales from the horse war,
Tell
you
us
say.
more.
Tell us more.
Well, I'm looking forward to the Monster Manual then in that case, because we've seen a couple of spreads from the Monster Manual, including the Ancient Green Dragon and the Skeletons page, which includes some equine bones.
There are some equine bones.
There is a
It has made it.
warhorse skeleton stat block
My
specifically.
goodness. That's super metal. I love that.
We've seen the Player's Handbook is getting into fans' hands here at Gen
Yes.
Con. We've also seen reviews start to pop up on YouTube. So we've seen the table of contents. I actually have not been able to crack this open. I just haven't had the opportunity to sit down and really read through it. So that is probably a flight home thing. So I'm just going to ask you, Makenzie,
Yeah.
basically, what's in it? We got chapter 1, we got playing the game.
Yep.
Tell me about it.
So this is the first player's handbook that actually teaches you how to play the game as soon as you open it, which is a remarkable achievement for a game that is 50 years old. But yeah, no, so the first chapter is all about literally teaching you how to play Dungeons & Dragons. One of my favorite things about the book is that it has examples of play. So we have a full like script of people around the table like talking about playing the game and saying what their characters do and walking through that whole thing, which I think is really cool because like when I started playing D&D, I started only a handful of years ago and I learned by watching a lot of actual plays. And so getting to actually have like that sort of same experience of now we're putting actual examples of play into the first chapter of the book so people can learn from reading and watching other people play was something really cool and a really fun evolution of the D&D 5e experience.
Yeah, there's some beautiful illos from John Grello that show kind of like the players and the
Yeah,
characters doing the
Yeah.
same sort
One
of.
of my favorite comments, though, about one of those arts is like, "What's your favorite piece of art?" Oh, it's the one where the DM is in a fetal position as the players are explaining what they're doing.
There's
Yes.
nothing more accurate than
I
that.
was like, you know what? I didn't notice that before, but now I can't unsee it.
Just need one like
and it's
this.
gorgeous. Like
There's
the DM's fully
eye
like
roll.
knees up on the table, hugging themselves.
There's a photo actually. So Shawn and Joe were running an adventure for Grimhollow that I've written for and Shawn edited for Gen Con. And Dante was there taking some photos of the games. And there's I don't know what the context is. Dante doesn't remember, but there's one of Joe just with his hands on his head, looking like he's about to panic, which is perfect. Same energy.
Totally candid too.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the true DMing experience. You're not really DMing unless you're like, I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for this. Oh no.
Yeah, one of the great things though is that it was recognized
Mm.
that we do need to teach people how to play within the
Yeah.
game, and the role of these books as user manuals
Mhm.
is so important. And sometimes it gets lost because of our enthusiasm
Oh yeah.
and we want to show you all these cool things we did, and we have to take a step back
Yeah.
and say, here, one of the first things I turn to with any new game is there a section where it shows you play? And I edited one once And I was going through and I'm like, okay, yeah, roll, check here. Player says this. And I realized through several pages, no roll failed. I'm like, okay, so we don't know what happens in this game if you fail a check or a roll.
Sure.
And that might be important for the game master to know how to express that. So, any example of play that helps that game master for the first time sit down and feel comfortable playing is so important. That I was glad to see that there right at the start.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of 2014 Player's Handbook is interesting in that way. And it didn't occur to me until, I think I'd read through the rules, but really I'd learned like a lot of folk who got into the rules mid 5th edition, like I did, from watching actual plays and being like, oh, I know how this rule works. I didn't realize, I didn't know how rolling a natural 20 on a death save worked until I was playing at a convention and somebody rolled it. And I was like, oh, great, you succeed 2 death saves. And they're like, no, I come back. Because the 2014 book kind of had the rules interspersed in with the character creation and then how combat works. And there's a lot of rules there, but it's also about like how to construct, encounters and things like that. And so I agree, just having it like, these are the rules, almost like a board game rulebook manual. These are the rules here. And then these are all the tools that you need to engage with the game, kind of following that up.
Yeah. There is no one right way to make any of these books.
Sure.
But there are lots of wrong ways. And it is just try to avoid the wrong ways and then you will get to a right way that works for folks.
I heard someone else say that a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Then we have the creating a character chapter, which is chapter 2. Before we get into the subclasses, which the artwork on some of these, I really love the design. Have you had a chance to flick through this at all yet?
Only very briefly.
Yeah, okay, yeah, same experience.
Yeah.
But I love the one I love in particular. I believe it's the Warlock Pact of the Fae.
With the scissors.
How cool are the scissors?
So cool.
The scissors there's something so fae and fairy about a pair of scissors.
A massive pair of scissors.
A massive
like
pair
it's not
of scissors.
like a little snippy snip.
Yeah.
It is I think it's like yay big.
Yeah.
It's like as big as like the elf's torso.
These things are a weapon.
They are intended to be like, I always imagine, because with the warlock, you get the Pact of the Blade. I imagine that is their Pact of the Blade.
Cool.
And that when they're doing their Pact of the Blade attacks, they're just taking out these massive scissors and just snipping enemies.
Yeah. I'm imagining a monster hunter hunting through a forest after a fey creature and identifying the creature by crouching down and going, these wounds were made by scissors. This is clearly a warlock we're hunting, It's such a specific weapon. And then after that, character origins, which kind of makes up the other part with the backgrounds, the feat that you get as part of your background, and the ability score increases tied to the background as well. Calm down, Shawn. It's okay. What I like about the feats chapter, and again, I'm just kind of going off the table of contents because I haven't been able to crack into it, but at surface kind of reading, I like how feats are kind of broken into origin feats, general feats, fighting styles. I think that's great that they're not necessarily just interspersed in with the other feats so that fighters and paladins and whoever get fighting styles can flick straight to that section to find them. And then epic boons. Are they level 20 feats
level
only?
Level 19 feats.
Right. Okay. There you go. Do you have any favorite feats that made it in?
Favorite fighting style? Blind fighting? So
Sure,
happy that
yeah.
made that one in. I love me some good blind sight. That one's always fun. Fey Touched made it in, I believe.
Okay.
Honestly, I just love a lot of the general feats kind of got a nice glow up because we basically wanted to make sure that when you take a feat instead of a ability score, or when you take a feat that isn't the ability score improvement feat,
Sure. Yeah.
you still get some sort of bonus. So any feat that isn't in the epic boon category, which has its own parameters, the fighting style category or the origins category, we wanted to include some sort of ability score increase. So a lot of those feats before in 2014 didn't have an attached ability score increase, but now do. And so that was something that I love about all the feats in that general categories. They all kind of got a little bit of a boost and they got super excited. I think my favorite origin feat, one of my favorite feats is the crafter origin feat. My favorite thing about it is that we designed it so it has like a MacGyver-esque element where you can fast craft something that you can just put something together and then it'll kind of fall apart in a little bit, but it is for like that emergency. You take an hour and you just pull something together and you're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, right.
And that one's super fun. I love we went through several iterations of that feat in particular because we also revamped the crafting rules. And so we wanted to make sure that integrated well.
So we've got general, origin, general, fighting style, and epic. Now, epic's for level 19, as you just mentioned. Can you take a fighting style as a feat if it's not part of your class?
Do you meet the prerequisites?
Okay. So there are like prerequisites around like,
Yes.
are you from one of these classes or do you have one of these other features?
Yeah, every feat has some semblance of a prerequisite.
Yeah, got you. Okay. So can you take an origin feat
Yes,
if
you can.
it's not part of your origin? Like
Yes, you
if
can.
you're- Okay, cool.
Well, like some of the really classic feats are origin feats, like tough.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you can always just grab that. Lucky is an origin feat.
Skilled.
Good old lucky, good old tough, good old skilled, magic initiate. All those you can just kind of grab whenever. You just don't get the juicy ability score increase, but
You know, people who like to jerry rig characters, min max characters, play with different builds are going to have a lot of fun with this feat
Yeah.
system because of that prerequisite, which might seem like a restriction. And while I do like flexibility in character builds and character creation, those restrictions make it like building Lego, you
Mhm.
know, where like not every Lego piece is going to fit where you need to construct the next
Yeah.
part of the building. But that's kind of the fun, is like figuring out how to make the thing that you
Mhm.
want to make using the pieces you have.
And sometimes you need to protect the player from themselves.
that
It's like,
too.
This feat
golly.
sounds good. This feat's not going to do any good unless.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so there's a
Yep.
little bit of that built in, which is nice. A little bit of guardrail.
Yeah, a lot of the feats that didn't have that were kind of like, oh, you know where north is, with
Sure.
like not really any tangible mechanical
Key
benefit.
mind.
It's that way.
Yeah, it's,
Sorry about that.
it's like, you know where north is. Great, you're in hell. Hell doesn't have a north. This is so helpful. We wanted to make sure all the feats had like actual tangible mechanical benefits tied to them now.
Speaking about spells super quickly, which is chapter 7. I said this to you the other night, Makenzie, but thank you for adding an extra dice to the
Yep.
healing spells, because from my perspective, whether you think this creates, makes healing too powerful or whatever.
Oh, don't worry. The monsters will hit harder.
Yeah, I believe it. I
Right.
believe it.
You're going to want that as extra dice. Just, don't worry. We'll make them worth it.
Well, twinned with the heroic inspiration enabling you to re-roll healing, it makes it great for the extrapolated rest mechanics from Grim
Mhm.
Hollow, where I'm like,
Yeah.
great, okay, yeah, Cure Wounds is going to come in real handy now. Whereas before, if you could cast Cure Wounds only a handful of times during a week, 1d8 wasn't really cutting it super well. But 2d8 with a potential reroll, that's going to work
Oh, yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So I was actually saying during the partner panel earlier today, now that I've seen the Green Dragon as well, and I'm making a couple of extrapolations and assumptions, but seeing some of the new design directions is really fun for third parties because it's like design jazz,
Mhm.
where, we see what was in the 2014 rules and the SRD, and how we can build upon those and take those mechanics and change them slightly. This is what we're going to create. And now that 2024 is coming along and providing new kind of musical notes, as it were, I'm already starting to think like,
Give it a little bit of this.
oh, yeah,
Design.
exactly.
More
I know
jazz
exactly how I'm
hands,
going
more
to use
Jazz
that.
hands is a feat.
Mm.
Would be a fantastic.
That's true.
Tell me a bit more about how the spells were changing. You were telling me that you were had a hand in how much damage a lot of the spells did.
Yes. So there is gloriously locked up away in one of our many, many vaults is a lovely math spreadsheet that calculates how much damage certain spells should be doing and how much healing they should be doing depending on their targeting and their level and a bunch of other different factors.
Sure.
I am not sure of the arcane math that went into that spreadsheet. All I know is that it exists. I've beheld it with my own eyes. But we basically took that spreadsheet and we looked at every single spell from 2014 and we made sure that all the spells hit where they were supposed to. And that's one of the very earliest ones that hit even before I got onto the book was, as you mentioned, the healing spells, they got that buff. But also a lot of the damage dealing spells were hitting below their belt, or not a lot, but a good handful of them were hitting below their belt. We wanted to make sure they punched well.
Sure.
They had a good damage. Earthquake now does more damage than a fireball.
Sure. Okay.
A building falling on you did less damage than a fireball.
Right.
And that didn't seem right. So now the building falling on you does more damage.
Can I ask a sort of a side question?
Yeah, of course.
I always get people asking me, what do I need to do to become a game designer? And I have various answers depending on their interest. But how much math goes into your day when you are designing rules?
So I think it actually depends. We
Depends on-
differ. I have more math.
Yeah, Makenzie has more math and deals with math a lot.
Mhm.
They do
Yep.
mathematical checks on things in their review. You're checking numbers, you're checking.
Yes.
Yeah, because you don't want the math not to end up, and that has cascading effects. But if you approach it from the narrative or from the project leadership side, you're looking at the project holistically, and you trust, gifted mechanical, technical, savvy minds to go and tackle that part. And then you're looking at the art, and you're looking at the chapters, and you're looking at the vision across and saying, does the theme still jive, or does my design jazz still resonate in this product?
Yeah.
So who does that mathematical work on your team? You do.
I'm one of the people. It's me, Ben Petrosor, Jeremy Crawford. Ron Lundeen also does some mathematical work, though a lot of his mathematical work is in playtest number crunching.
Gotcha.
Which Godspeed to him, because I can't do that. But yeah, I've as the years have gone on, I've transitioned from more of a narrative design standpoint to a more mechanical number crunch standpoint. Though I do still do the narrative is still really important because a lot of times, like when I'm doing adventure development, I have to make sure everything works as intended with the mechanics, but also I need to make sure the story of the adventure stays intact. And so there is still a lot of that creative writing brain that kind of goes into that, and making sure, like, is the adventure still fun to play? Does it generate good stories? It doesn't matter if the numbers are right if it's not fun to play, because no one's going to experience the numbers if no one plays it.
And there's a little bit of bleed back and forth. Like occasionally I'll design a monster or two or something, but largely we kind of have our experts now. Our team, we want everybody to be able to do a little bit of everything, so that none of our books is the result of one person. It's always a team effort. Editors will catch things that we'll miss. We'll incorporate things that editors maybe don't look at. Two designers are always going to be better than one, and it always comes together to become something really neat.
So it's one of those things where it's like, to answer the question of how much math do you need, math is having a foundation of mathematical stability, but it is not a necessity. You do not need to have taken statistics. You do not need to have had a computer science major or minor. You do not need to be able to do hyper fast calculations in your head. But just having an understanding and a healthy respect for the math is certainly very helpful. And then at some point you might get to the point where you're like, oh God, I can do dice averages in my head. Oh no. Oh no. I do them out of habit now. It's really bad for my poor D&D group, because my DM will roll a bunch of monster dice and I'll look at the amount and go, oh, that's below average. And he's like, Makenzie, I felt good about that. And I'm like, yeah, well, you rolled below average, so sorry.
5d6 is 17.5, yes.
Oh, I have a kind of a similar question along those lines, and this might be revealing the Colonel's secret recipe a little bit, but how do you calculate? I have a specific math question. Because I was trying to figure this out when we were working on the Monster Hunter.
Right.
The Monster Hunter is a martial class that doesn't get multi-attack, but instead gets a lot more triggers on attacking as a reaction, kind of like an attack of opportunity. So we were trying to work out the math to ensure that there were enough triggers. We wanted their studied response attack to kind of be like a rogue sneak attack, in the way that, like, this is what you will do turn to turn. 80% of the time you will be able to do it, but it does have some specific triggers so that you have to think tactically about how you pull it off. And so I was calculating, I was like, all right, so let's assume, just for control of the math, that this Monster Hunter is wielding a longsword, and that their modifiers are X and Y. And so X and Y plus their modifiers plus the damage for the dice. This is super great podcasting.
Tell me more.
You take 3 steps avoiding the odd numbers block. Exactly.
Like, basically it was like, all the averages added together, bracketed as a single attack, plus the same thing again for a next attack as like 2 attacks on a turn, right? And then calculating that by how many attacks they get in a round and separating out like if they're doing the attack on 2 attacks on their turn plus an extra attack like outside of their turn, versus if they just have 1 attack on their turn but they have an extra buff modifier versus and then a separate attack, blah blah blah. Anyway, my question is this.
Yes.
Do you, because I thought my
Can
math.
you find the
Can you
X?
find the X? Yeah,
Can
exactly.
you find X?
Solve for X.
I thought my math was rock solid,
Uh-huh.
but then it was actually Nick from the Ghostfire team who came down and pointed out, and he's not on the design team, he's in the operations team, but he came down and pointed out that my math might have been entirely, completely flawed because it assumed that the Monster Hunter was hitting with every attack. He's like, what you should do is take your bracket modifiers and then times it by like 0.6 to get an average of like how often the hunter hits to see how much damage it's doing on average over like 6 rounds of combat. Was he right? Is there that going into your math as well?
So yes and no and a little bit, but parallel. So I don't do a lot of the player-facing math. So a lot of my math expertise actually comes from monsters, and then working with adventure and making sure the adventure words and numbers are correct is a lot of what my mechanical expertise is on. There is a player character math spreadsheet very similar to the spell math spreadsheet that is deep in the vault, the arcane knowledge. I did not build that spreadsheet. I don't know exactly what goes into that. But for the monster math, we have a similar process, and I won't go into exactly what we calculate, but we do take into account like how often might they hit, and we basically measure how often they might hit based on like their attack modifier, and like the damage averages and stuff like that. So we do take into account how often that monster might hit when we are calculating their essentially the equivalent of like the CR. I do not know the exact numbers of how much, like if it's a 0.6 or a 0.7 or a 0.3, but it is something that is taken into account.
I got so granular because we've gotten to a point where currently the Monster Hunter adds their strength or dex, whatever they're using, plus their intelligence to their attack roll, because the idea is that they know where to hit the monster. But there was a version that didn't add intelligence, and that version had multi-attack. So the idea was that it's got more attacks if it's hitting less, blah, blah, blah. And I was like timesing by 0.6 for the non-intelligence added version, and then 0.7 if we were adding intelligence, just to try and average that out better.
I apologize for bringing up math, folks.
Yeah. Look, I apologize to everyone else, but there are some Lorecast diehards that would have found that super interesting.
There is on our Discord, there is a big conversation going on about this right now. So
I think it also depends on your playtesting, right? What do your players like? What resonates with them? Do they feel like it's powerful? Do they feel like it's underpowered? And
that's what I said exactly.
Balance, yeah.
I'm like, the math may balance out, but people may feel bad not being able to attack twice because they want to roll the die twice rather than once.
Yeah.
And it's all part of the equation, the human equation, if you will.
Oh yeah, no, that is a big designing for humans is a big part of designing for D&D. And it's a big part of a lot of like the improvements we did to the player's handbook, because the math might be good, things might work out. I come from a computer science background in addition to a creative writing background, and it's easy designing for computers because computers do not have opinions. Computers just do what you tell them to.
Yes.
They shouldn't. People are good at making computers look like they have opinions. They do not actually have opinions.
True.
You are correct.
The computer will remember that.
Yes. No offense.
But if the computer messes up, it's because I input something wrong, and you can just fix that and make the computer the computer will understand what you write very literally. Humans do not do that. Humans, it does not matter if the numbers are correct. Depending on how you word something, depending on how things are framed, humans will interpret it differently. And that's where to go back to your earlier point, that's where the importance of creative writing and a narrative aspect of doing this kind of game design comes in, because you do have to remember you are writing for the very mistake-prone, creative, wonderfully absurd human brain, and it's always going to be every human brain is going to interpret something differently. And so you just kind of have to try and make things as clear and as accessible as possible to all kinds of brains.
Right. And not only that, you're doing it for a brain that is going to be dealing with 4 to 6 to 7 other brains who will need to interpret and present. And it's this is tough.
And that's what
This
makes
thing
that,
we do.
I mean, that's what makes the Player's Handbook so wonderful, right? Is it's not our book, it's the player's book. Like the amount of times where our team has let go of something that personally they might have loved because the fans love something different, right? And at the end of the day, the book and the playtest, like these are all the results of what our fans wanted. And especially with this book, right? It's not just those playtests, it's also all of the insights that we've gained over the past 10 years of the game. Like I'm frankly really excited for the Dungeon Master's Guide for the similar reasons we discussed at the beginning, is because that book now opens telling you about what it's like to be a dungeon master, which if you're opening that book for the first time, I remember fondly opening the 2015 Dungeon Master? No, it still was 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, and reading the cosmology chapter and being so interested. I remember I was sitting in a park in Smyrna, Tennessee, reading about the planes of existence. I thought it was amazing. And I felt I need to make a world. I need to make all these things. I need to start here. And that's what I did because that's what the DM before me did. You actually don't need to do that for a while, right? You can just focus on the here, the now, the being a DM. And so I can't wait for that book to come out as well.
Speaking of future books, I can't wait to come out. I'm really looking forward to the Monster Manual because monsters are my jam. And getting a look at the Ancient Green Dragon has made me go, interesting. There's some design developments there that suggest a direction that I find very interesting in terms of that musical jazz. The Green Dragon, Shawn, if you haven't seen it yet,
not.
It has legendary resistance that I believe it gets 4 times a day, but it gets a 5th if it's in its lair.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And it doesn't have any legendary actions. It has, I think, 4 reactions and a 5th reaction.
It's 3 reactions, 4th if it's in its lair.
Right.
Designed to be finalized.
Yeah, of
possibly,
course. Once that book's...
But oh gosh, yeah, no, I love the new direction we're taking the dragons makes me so happy because they're just so meaty.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this thing's got spells as well, kind of baked
That's
into
my
a
favorite
stat
part,
block.
is the fact that we've liberated the dragons from the trap of / bite of just breathe. Yeah. Now instead of just
Thanks for the reminder.
Dragon instructional
dragon
manual.
bite, breathe.
Yeah.
We've
And now we're all manual
we've
breathing.
added this fun variety to what they can do, not just in terms of like reactions or, formerly legendary actions,
Sure.
but also just on their turn, they're no longer just going bite, smash, smash. They can do bite, smash, smash. They can do bite, smash, spell. They can do a different spell each round. And it's this really fun kind of tactical way of like playing these dragons as these really hyper intelligent, hyper magical creatures that control the environment around them, which is just going to be so much fun to just put out and see like how these like different dragons, like which spells do different dragons favor?
Sure.
How do they interact with their environment? All that sort of thing. And like my favorite thing is like frightened. Was it frightening presence? Frightful presence.
Yeah.
Very classic, very fun. Also, having 10 dragons with the exact same frightful presence is a bit much. And so we've kind of, the green dragon does not have frightful presence. It has something else.
Jazzful presence.
Jazzful presence.
But going back to the history of D&D, right, and the very first monster manual for AD&D, it was there's a certain percentage chance that they can cast spells, a certain percentage chance that they can polymorph. So that merchant you met at the market who was kind of mysterious, that could be a dragon. And we sort of lost that over the editions where it did become sort of more mechanical and more bestial. And I love to see it move back in that direction where that patron that just asks you to fight the dragon over here could be the dragon that's trying to make its lair in that same dragon's lair.
Yeah.
And I love that the spells are all thematic to the dragons. Like the green dragon has like charm monster. And it's like, oh, because green dragons are manipulators.
Sure.
And that's fun being able to play that up and really explore like how do these dragons who are, and have always been these hyper powerful, intensely magical beings that are at the center of a lot of the D&D worlds, how do they interact with the world? How do they have their own personalities and having their scale coloration and their sort of that innate dragon magic really matter beyond just this is the damage that they do
Sure.
is super fun.
The visual direction on the dragons too.
Oh,
is
that
really
too.
great.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. Oh,
Yeah,
I cannot praise that enough.
Yeah. Is there a dragon you've seen that you like most?
You know, from the artwork that we saw the last couple of weeks, because we did talk about that on the Lorecast,
Yeah.
I feel like I might be forgetting one, but one that's sticking in my mind at the moment, it might just be because we're talking about it, is the green dragon,
Mhm.
the really serpentine look that it
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
like a giant boa constrictor
Yeah.
in the forest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very
And the
cool.
gold dragon also is real has that
That
really
one's my
long,
favorite.
lengthy,
Yes,
like
yeah.
almost like koi fish like look
Mhm.
to it. It's so pretty.
The only problem I had with the long flowing tail almost was my players going to be like, well, obviously I can grab the tail as
Yes.
it tries to escape and beat it back and forth. Like, no, you can't.
Well, as somebody, and this is what I was talking about before with the design jazz, I'm kind of excited to see more monsters because as somebody in our Grim Hollow playtest Discord pointed out, we're going to have to redesign the lair sense of the Monster Hunter,
Mhm.
which at least when it's hunting ancient green dragons, because it has features that trigger off of legendary actions,
Right.
which might need to become reactions, but we'll find
Well,
out
there are
more.
no dragons in Ethris anyway, so we don't have to worry about
The diseasey ones. We got
that.
the diseasey ones.
They don't count.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the other thing is that like all the monsters that have legendary actions that are before this book, you can still totally use.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's the other thing. It's like, yeah, you can still totally use them.
That's the okay. So the design talk. The Monster Hunter. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
I feel like I'm like I have friends over. I want to show them my room and all my stuff. The Monster Hunter. I was describing how it has features that trigger off making attacks outside of its turn as a reaction, but a lot of those features are worded very specifically in a way that they can trigger off of its studied response, but they can also trigger off of like making an attack of opportunity. So it doesn't say when the Monster Hunter makes an attack of opportunity, X also happens. It says when the Monster Hunter makes an attack as a reaction, X happens to kind of try to cover all bases. And what I was thinking about today was, is there a way to word lair sense to be like, when a monster makes an action, takes an action outside of its turn, the Monster Hunter can do X to try to cover both reactions and legendary actions, depending on what type of monster the GM is using.
We'll have to study this,
We will, yes.
and we'll have to keep it simple.
Okay.
We can keep building up, but as soon as we get too complicated, we've got to cut it back and come at it a whole new way.
Yes, Sensei.
All right.
Speaking of the art from the Monster Manual, something that was mentioned the other day at the press event that I was at was how there's less emphasis on sort of isolated character art pieces and more kind of spreads and scenes going into the Monster Manual. We've seen this with the Green Dragon, with the skeletons. The idea and the intention being not showing monsters as kind of just like isolated things, but trying to give GMs ideas about stories that could be told with these monsters. What could they be doing in a story that you're running? And I'm just generally a fan of more art and more spreads. So
The art I've seen so far is gorgeous. And obviously, like, the book isn't, we're still working on it as we record this episode. So there's obviously a lot that might shift around.
sure.
Depending on how things, like, building a book is so complicated. And so it's like there's some pieces that sadly may not make it in. There's some pieces that we might get that I haven't seen yet because we're still waiting on them.
Oh, I know of
but-
at least one, and it's pretty amazing.
He's just got this look in his eye. Oh, man, I wish
Yeah.
you should have done it that way. Anyway, we can't recapture it. It's fine.
The moment is gone.
Yeah,
And
but
it's
there is
done. The
something
moment is
special
done.
coming.
Yes.
No, the art is so pretty for the Monster Manual. I mean, the art for all of the core 2024 books are just, man, our art team, our art director, all the art directors, all the concept art, all the artists that we have in these books. Oh, they've knocked it out of the park. Like, as much as I love my job, I love making the words work. I love making the numbers work. The graphic team and the artists just make it come alive in a way like I could never. And I bow down to their amazing expertise.
Yeah, Emmy Tangi was mentioning in the Player's Handbook panel recently about so many of those things that you love, those little touches, a lot of those were the artists adding in some of
Yeah.
that stuff. Like we talk about that bass loot in that one bard piece.
Glamour bard.
Or just some, like if you look at a piece for a while and you see something small that feels like a very thoughtful touch sort of thing, it might have just been the artist adding that thing in there on their own and saying, is this okay? And our team going, more of this. Yes, please. Thank you. Amazing. Give us, keep going.
We can add words.
Yes, we will change.
We will change these words
for that
to make that work. Yes.
That's another interesting component of design.
Yeah.
A lot of times my mechanical design review is making sure the mechanics match the art.
Yeah.
And I've worked on Surviving Strange Hollow, where we started with an art, and the artist Emily Hare said, "Well, how do you use this?" So I sat down and I said, "If this monster has 3 eyes, that third eye will do something.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we will make if it has some strange feature, we will add a mechanic to use that feature. So go wild, do whatever feels right. We will make it work."
Yeah, we've done more concept art for at least since I've been on. We did concept pushes for products like Planescape. We did a shorter one for quests, and it's always interesting to see what comes out of a concept phase that you're like, actually, that's really great. And like, yes, and to the artist, can you do that this way? And then we're like, great, we have this thing now. It's going to go right here. This is perfect in this way. And the artist, and we've brought on some incredible concept artists like Ramin, is an incredible concept artist. And frankly, like when we were working on quests, the Infinite Staircase is such a bizarre thing to put into words, and Noor nailed it on the first try. He's like, how's this? And we're like, and then we took that concept to final, and that's the one you get when you open the introduction, that big tall piece right aside from it. That was Noor's concept piece that we're like, yes, please.
It's interesting because I've realized I do that with miniatures. The adventure we're running at Gen Con features, spoilers, this won't come out till after Gen Con, features a giant wolf as its main antagonist. And that idea basically came because I had a giant wolf miniature and I was like, I want to give this thing rules. Let's get this on the table.
I mean, like some of the best like third-party supplements I saw from independent creators would have this incredible art. I know Heavy Arms, like Armor's Handbook. I was like, you must have spent a lot of money on these pieces. He's like, oh, I actually found pieces online that I liked. I reached out to the artist. I asked if I could license the piece. He's like, and then I wrote that section to that art piece. And he's like, I only commissioned 1 half-page scene for this book. And it's just super cool, like how art and I mean, it's very much a negotiation and a collaboration a lot of the time. And when those two things work together, it's great. And we typically think of the art and graphic design and game design teams all as like one creative family. Yes. So, yeah.
Even going back to Gary Gygax, some of his monsters were little trinkets that he found at flea markets and in
the owlbear, the rest monster.
All of that. It's okay. Well, that's cool. Let's make a monster.
Speaking of a couple of other things that I saw at Gen Con, very quickly, Project Sigil. I've heard the word now used by Wizards of the Coast. Christian Hoffer mentioned on comicbook.com a couple of weeks ago. He's like, I think it has a name now based on an article that he had read. Now I've heard it called Project Sigil. I'm going to be honest. It looks coolish.
Sigil.
I don't use VTTs typically. I don't know that I'll get a lot of use out of Project Sigil. Personally, for my home games, that's just because I prefer kind of pen and paper and gaming in person and that sort of thing. But when I saw some of and this was just seeing, I was not hands-on in any capacity, not even like playing a game or anything. It was just a presentation. But it looks like, I heard it compared to Minecraft or like digital Lego, the way to construct dungeons with it. I don't know why I thought it wouldn't be as modular as it is, but it's super just like click, drag here, room pops in, and then you can remove walls and by the looks of it and put them in and like move stuff around. And I was just like, that's cool, actually.
Even as far back as PAX Unplugged, some really grumpy YouTubers who Wizards can't do anything right. And they went to PAX and they saw a demo and they're like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And these are old school folks who don't want to like things and they really like things. And everything I've seen of it is exactly that. It looks very easy to use and you can create some pretty fantastic things with it.
Yeah, it looks like a level builder, Like I can see it being used by, game masters that will never run a game in this dungeon, but they just spend hours kind of fleshing it out and making it bigger and putting details into it. But I could also see it being used by like modders or, video game developers just to kind of like flesh out an idea or something like that, or just playing it. Like it looks like it has a real Minecraft quality to it, which is really cool. I know you kind of have seen bits that maybe haven't been revealed yet, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
We'll have like studio calls sometimes, and their team will get up and be like, by the way, this is what we've been working on for the past X number of days. And we're like, whoa, and all the team's chat is just full of like emojis. And,
I remember, this is a while ago, but I remember the first time I got to see the little Ankeg mini. And I got to see the Ankeg mini actually spit acid at my character. And it was terrifying and amazing. And I think that moment is actually captured on camera in one of the D&D directs that I was with Iffy and Gina. We were playing through the VTT, obviously a little bit earlier, so it's been developed out far more than what I saw then. But I remember that moment of seeing the Ankeg spit acid in this huge line at our minis and going, "Oh my god!" Like the effects that they have, like the minis can do, is just amazing, and I can't wait to see what else they're.
I'm so glad the minis can spit, because I was having to spit on my players' minis to simulate.
You're really, really into the role playing.
Yes.
Never play with never. You always hope Justice doesn't bring out the Ankeg.
And that's why Justice is not allowed to run at conventions anymore.
He cannot bring out the Ankeg. He cannot bring out the black dragon. He cannot bring out the copper dragon.
Yes.
Or the troglodytes.
All of the.
Or the troglodytes.
So do you use miniatures when you play, or are you like Shawn and you use candies and your players are just like, you slay the monster, you get to eat the candy? They're like, thanks.
No, that's how I came up. And in Provo, Utah, my old DM Colin used to do that with the gummy bears. And frankly, I was not. We were playing 3.5, and my character was not very powerful. And I almost never got to eat things. But yeah, like when the monster was bigger, as a bigger piece of candy, I typically use miniatures now.
See, what I do is I manipulate my players though, because I'll be like, okay, here is the dark chocolate peanut butter cups for the minions.
Oh, that's like
and then a kale bar is the boss, and they're like, well, we're gonna fight the minions first, and I get more attacks in with the boss that way.
There's legitimately a game design problem there, right? And it's this: if you have a character that's not very powerful, that's one thing. But if you're a character who is a healer predominantly or a support role, you don't get to eat the candies as much. Now, assuming that your goal as a game is to ensure relatively equal candy consumption between players, you've got to figure out a way to ensure that those healer characters get to eat candies based on some mechanical effect.
It's the long game, Ben. It's the long game. Because all the players that eat too much, they will have blood sugar problems.
Right. I mean, I was thinking like when we're all in nursing homes, like we could play some D&D and like my beta blocker will be right there. And they're like, you got it, Justice. Yay! And then I'm like, hey, look at that. I guess if you take the wrong pill, it could be catastrophic.
My gout medication.
Yeah. Which one did you get? I got the Xanax. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I have a theory, Shawn. It's a little bit of a conspiracy theory. Crack out your conspiracy cubes, everyone. I have a little bit of a theory. My theory is this. A couple of weeks ago, either James Introcaso or Matthew Colville listened to the Lorecast.
I'm sorry.
They heard us say a great name for their RPG would be, wahoo, I hit the bad guy.
That's true.
Then they wrote on a whiteboard, wahoo, I hit the bad guy. And they were like, well, we can't use that. Let's ideate from there. And that's how they landed on Draw Steel for the name of the MCDM RPG, which has been announced.
Vague and evocative.
It's true.
It is.
It is.
What kind of steel are you drawing? Is it, are you drawing like on a whiteboard, or are you drawing an actual weapon? You know, it's very vague, yet can be evocative. Yeah, I like it.
The actual plot twist is that Draw Steel is just a coloring book of sorts.
Yeah. I would buy that.
I saw someone, I wish I could remember who this was, because it's someone we know, but there was a reply to a tweet that said, my next RPG will be called Draw, Steal, STEAL. Yeah, and it's going to be my art theft.
Right. It's a
RPG.
heist. It's a heist game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love it.
I don't know. That sounds cool. That sounds like a cool name for a game. They, I think it was Intricasso was tweeting that they want folks to know this is a game about combat. It can do other things as well, but that is what they want folks to know when they get into Draw Steal. I had a suspicion it would be a verb, which I think is great. It feels very action oriented. So I haven't had a chance to really. We're skipping over a lot of news this week because I haven't had a chance to read a lot of it. So I think that was kind of what was announced. Not much else.
I'm playing it next week.
Oh, are you?
A week from today.
Okay.
A week from tomorrow, I will be playing a playtest, so we can talk about it next time.
Okay. I shall expect a full report.
But have you both worked with James Intricasso?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing human being.
MCDM was one of my first big freelancing gigs. They were the folks who helped me start out as a full-time freelancer because Matt Colville gave me my first really big, prominent freelancing gig as a TTRPG creator. And I have so much love for the folks over at MCDM.
I worked on Arcadia and Kingdoms and Warfare, and like James has done so much work for helping to train up game designers.
Yeah.
And, being a managing line editor for Arcadia. That's not easy work. And,
No.
and renewing, and he's a good mentor, gives it advice, and their rates have always been good too. And
Yep.
So yeah,
They were such a
Super
pleasure to work with as a new designer, and James was amazing at helping me become the designer I am. Also, I did not realize we worked on Kingdoms and Warfare together.
It is.
we were around.
It is a,
I know
it
we
is
were
a strange
around. I just
industry.
was like, wait a minute,
Yes,
we were on that project together?
probably. Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
So, did you ever in your wildest dreams think you would be working on a new edition
No.
of
The Player's Handbook.
the Player's Handbook for Dungeons and Dragons, or a manager of other creators at this thing that was so important to so many people?
I mean, do you want to answer the manager question first?
I mean, I honestly, I did not think my MBA would become relevant again. I didn't think it would ever be relevant when I entered this industry and left healthcare, and I didn't think it would circle back around. I'm actually really grateful for the job I have because I still get to lead projects, and I get to help remove barriers for the team. So, maybe one day I will have to make a choice between creative or leadership, but I'm happy to remain in both right now and do these two things that I love and use more of my skill set. So no, I wouldn't have expected that. And I'm grateful for it every
I'm
day.
gonna be honest. I think the managing editor or the managing game designer position is so interesting to me.
It's weird.
It's so weird and so cool. So I was like, I want you to answer that one first because that one is just so not out of the blue, but out of the ballpark that I would have ever imagined. And I think it's such a fascinating and cool job that you have.
It's weird. We were doing the signings and somebody looked at my placard and she goes, managing game designer, what does that mean? I said, I'm a game designer who manages. And she goes, what does that mean? I was like, well, I'm a game designer sometimes and I'm a manager sometimes. So I'm a manager and a game designer managing game design. She goes, wow. she's like, okay. And then she moves over to Ron and she's like, what do you do? He's like, I'm a game designer. She's like, awesome. My book. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
Okay, you gave everyone cute little doodles.
Yeah,
so.
I did the drawings. And Chris does drawings. And so by the time he gets mine, they're little drawings.
Yeah, I just draw very lumpy D20s.
Lumpy D20 is the best D20.
Yeah. No, I realized as I'm sitting here, my very first convention was 5 years ago, Gen Con 2019. I had just started playing D&D then. 5 years ago, at my very first con, I didn't think I would be writing or designing for D&D full time, let alone be credited as a rules developer on the Player's Handbook. I remember, I've told the story a handful of times this weekend because it's always so fresh in my mind, especially with the release. But when I had been pulled in to do the printout reviews of the Player's Handbook. And I was going through and I caught a glimpse of the credits page out of the corner of my eye. And I saw that my name is next to the rules developer. I'm credited as a rules developer on the Player's Handbook. And I had to do a full-on double take because I was like, what? What? What do you mean? No, I I didn't think I did that much. Wait, are you sure? That's a mistake? Are you? And it still does not feel real because like this is the game that I have a job because of this game. I have so many friends because of this game. Now I am one of the core rule developers for this game, and that is nuts.
Yeah.
Is the only way I can put it. It's just nuts.
It's easy to underestimate how important the byline or the the contributor lines can be. I've been credited in a few Ghostfire books kind of as a writer, but it's been kind of doing a lot of pick up things, writing GM advice or things like that, which I did for Valaka as it was ending production. But just this adventure that we're running at Gen Con, we kind of formalized into a PDF, and it was one of the first times that it was like adventure written by Ben Byrne that I hadn't typed into the Word document myself to convert it to a PDF. So it is really great kind of being like, yeah, I did a thing. And like, yeah.
And I feel like in games in general, and we do not stop enough to just and look at where you've been and go, wow, I feel really grateful to be here, right? Just because you're moving so fast all the time. And I think just in life in general, like we need to be better about stopping and going and being mindful, taking each day at a time and just being grateful for all the stuff we've all had to put up with like over our lives and where we're at now. So.
Well, speaking of stopping, we need to stop this podcast because we have gone a little bit over time. We didn't get to any listener emails. I apologize. I did have one set aside while we had Wizards of the Coast designers in the studio, but I'll have to save it for next time.
What was it? Can we just know?
Great question. Yeah, you can know. I feel like that's a tease.
It is a tease. But then I can tune in next week and
Marco has written in and asked, what is the most important thing to focus on as a first-time adventure writer? Is it focusing on the words, the design, the feel and atmosphere of the adventure, the layout, the art, or something else is the most important thing to focus on? What was your experience of the first adventure you wrote?
So the first adventure I ever wrote is actually on DM's Guild, and you can find it if you look hard enough. It's bad.
I took mine off.
Bad. Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
really? Find it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, mine is still up there, as is the second adventure. I keep them up as like a reminder of how far I've come.
Sure.
But like, it's bad. Don't look at them. But do if you want to see like where you start out as. But yeah, no, I will not lag up time answering that question, unfortunately. But it's a good question.
It is a great question. It is a great question. Well, if you want to ask great questions, you can email podcast@ghostfiregaming.com and I will take them and I will tease you with answering them the next week. So stick around because we will be back next week. You can find us on Twitch, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time if you're in Australia on a Tuesday. We're on YouTube. We're in all the places. You can give the likes, stars, Spotify. You can comment on Spotify. Not a lot of people know that. Thank you for bearing with me through the terrible calls to action. Do the things. Anyway, I've been Ben Byrne here with Shawn Merwin, Makenzie de Armas, and Justice Ramin Arman. And we will catch you next week for another episode of the Eldritch Lorecast.
Design.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.